Okay, so class number 6. Welcome everybody.
Welcome.
So just to say a little bit about Rachel, she was the one that Yaakov Avinu fell in love at first sight and wanted to marry her, and unfortunately, the father had a different plan. And the night of the wedding, he covered the face of Leah, and he gave Leah to Yaakov. And Rachel, who saw this, imagine her whole dream of marrying her man was given up into thin air, and Yaakov was worried about that. So he gave some signs, secret signs to Rachel, so that he'll know is it the right woman. And he knew that Rachel's going to be so embarrassed if Yaakov asks her for the sign. Right before he marries her, he's going to ask her for the signs, and she doesn't know them. So in order not to embarrass her sister, she gave her secret signs to her sister, so that she won't be embarrassed, which is something beautiful. We see the selflessness. It wasn't about her. She could have been like, too bad, let her be embarrassed. She's not supposed to marry, and she really cared about her sister.
What is the most, la plus belle vertu de Rachel? Comme chacune, ils ont
so that was, she is known for that. And because she was so selfless and she gave up her husband for her sister and didn't embarrass her sister, was so careful not to embarrass her sister. Later on, when the Jewish people were exiled, all the mothers and fathers were crying and were praying to God, don't do this to the Jewish people. And the only person God listened to was Rachel, because he said, I know you really care, because you cared for your sister's shame. So he listened to her. And the Jewish people, when they left Israel, they stopped. She was buried alone on the way out of Israel, and they stopped by her and prayed for her by her. She's in Hebron. No, she's not in Bethlehem.
On peut la pèleriner?
I think it's a little dangerous, but we can still go there. Okay, so now let's delve into class number 6. We just learned a beautiful story of Eliyahu Navi and how his trust in God helped him, and about Ovadia and how his trust in God helped him also. And now we're going to go into, we learned the first, right? We spoke about the alchemist, and the alchemist is just an example to explain to us someone who thinks they found the solution that will remove all anxiety, all worries, will make him peaceful and worry-free, right? So that's the alchemist. Today can be someone who thinks they found the best investment, or who puts all his trust in a trade or something instead of God. So the Rabbeinu Bachaya shows us, he says there's 10 ways how this person is still going to have worries when someone who has full trust in God will not have those worries. So the first one, he said, the alchemist needs tools and resources. He's always going to be worried. He needs his tools everywhere he goes. He needs his resources. He's always going to have to be worried about that. While someone who believes in God will know that even if he doesn't have the tools that he needs to work for, let's say his tools broke or whatever it is, he knows that his sustenance, everything comes from Hashem, and Hashem will provide for him no matter what, even if he doesn't have the resources, even if it's famine. We see that Ovadia, the servant of the king, the evil king, he was living during a time where there was famine, there was no rain, and because he had belief in Hashem that his responsibility was to provide for these 100 Nevi'im, God, in the famine, when there was no rain, found a way and helped him find a way to provide for these 100 prophets and for himself. So it just shows that nothing limits God.
No.
Number 2, an alchemist is always worried about getting sick from the fumes. He's worried about his future, what's going to happen, is he always going to have the strength and whatever. He's always worried about the dangers of being an alchemist, which also you can see in different trades. You can be worried. Is the trade market going down? Is it gonna, what's gonna happen in my future? There's always anxiety. But someone who has bitachon is not worried about his future. He knows that just like God provided him for now, for the present, God provide him and will take care of him in the future. And it says that, right, the alchemist can get sick and bad things can happen to him from the fumes. So we also have to know, the Rabbeinu Bachai says bad things can also happen to someone who believes in God. He can also get sick or get hurt or whatever it is that happens to him. But the difference between the alchemist or this person who relies on his own strength and abilities to someone who relies on God is that he knows, the person who relies on God, who has bitachon in God, he knows that even if something bad happens to him,
it's coming from above.
It comes from Hashem and it's for the good, and he takes it with joy. Just like we saw Nachum Ish Gamzu, who not celebrated, but who was, when they opened the box and they saw that there was sand and they wanted to kill him, he wasn't upset. He said, this also comes from God. I'm happy. And not only that, there was a miracle that saved him because his bitachon was so strong, and that it ended up that the sand turned into something that was priceless for the king. And the sand turned into arrows. He would throw them and he attacked his enemies with that. And in the end, it was better than if he would have brought his gold and silver that he had originally, because the king maybe would not have appreciated it. But here the king got something that he would never have got, and he appreciated even more. And he took off the decree and he gave him tons of gold in return to thank him for this. So we see how his bitachon was able to overturn the situation and show how it was really good. It was for the best. Now we're going to look inside 17 and we're going to see the third reason how bitachon is superior to someone who depends on his own strength. Vehashlishi, ki bal hakimya eno ma'amin al sodo zulato mi'irato al nafsho. The third manner in which a person who has bitachon is superior to the alchemist is secretive towards others out of concern for himself. So the alchemist is doing something back then that's not so legal, right? He's turning materials into gold. It's not really legal, and he can get caught and killed by the king. So he would keep it in secret. He wouldn't trust anyone. He wouldn't ask for advice to anyone. He would be too scared to share it with other people. We see the lack of trust. When someone trusts their own strength and their own whatever findings that will make them successful, they will be too scared to share it with others. They will be too scared to ask advice to others because they don't want to trust. They will be too scared when it's something that's not so clean that the government can, it's money that you're laundering or something they'll be too scared to be caught. It shows the lack of trust, which is so important. Trusting people, being trusting towards others, surrounding yourself with mentors and people who can give you a good advice when you're faced with hard situation. These are important things. And someone who trusts in God, let's continue reading. והבוטח באלוקים איננו ירא משום אדם ביטחונו, אבל הוא מספאר בו, כמו שאמר דוד המלך עליו השלום, באלוקים בטחתי, לא ירא מה יעשה אדם לי. Conversely, a person who trusts in God is not afraid of telling anyone about his trust. On the contrary, he boasts about it. Someone who loves God, someone who believes in God, someone who has such a good bitachon will will say, guys,
love for God.
I have so much love. I want you to have that too. I want you to have that too. When someone loves someone so much, when someone trusts someone so much, they are not afraid of showing it. We see that in relationship too. When a husband and wife love each other, they're not going to hide it. They're going to show it. They're going to be proud to say, this is my wife. I'm proud of her. I love her. or the opposite. This is my husband who I love. You're not embarrassed. You have nothing to hide. You want to show it. When you love and when you're and not only that, when you believe in God, you want others to believe in God. You want others to have that belief in God, because
when I have somebody in front of me that don't believe in God, j'arrive pas à juste dire ah ok. I try to always put like j'essaie toujours de ramener non mais you should because it's so good, like je suis en mission sur ça, mais des fois vaut mieux ne pas parce qu'ils sont à l'opposé.
No, it's not bad to share that, and it's important to share. That's what the Rabbeinu Bachaya says. You should share it. You shouldn't be secretive. Secretive people are usually people who have things to hide, who don't trust others. And bitachon, in a way, you see how bitachon, b'Hashem, trust in God, gives you healthy relationships. Because you're not hiding anything from people. You're trusting people. You're finding people who can give you advice on your situation, your business situation. You have nothing to hide. You're doing your business clean. Your business is clean. It's not, there's nothing, obviously if you have bitachon, then you're not doing anything illegal.
C'est ça que j'allais te demander.
It goes together.
When you trust God, like, tu n'as pas besoin d'être... comme ça, avec le gouvernement.
If you trust, that's exactly what he's saying. If you trust God, you don't need to do anything illegal in order to get money. It will come
to you
the right way, the clean way, because Hashem provides for you and will provide for you, and He wants you to do it the right way.
Yeah, always.
And not only that, you're gonna be able to share that with others and not be secretive and have healthy relationship with other people. Surround yourself by healthy people, by people who can give you advice, because you have nothing to hide. It says, he brings in the pasuk of David HaMelech. It says that David said, I trusted in God, I will not fear. What can man do to me? Who was David HaMelech talking about him? David HaMelech had a very hard life, especially with people. Towards before he was becoming king, the king Shaul knew that he would be the next king, and this jealousy came over him. The Spirit of God would leave him because it would go on David HaMelech, and the Spirit of God can't go on two kings. And when he lost that Spirit of God, he would go and he would chase David and try to kill him, and he had armies and looking for him. He went through very hard times. And you know what David said about this? He said, I trust in God, I will not fear. What can man do to me? Even a man who's a king, who was a person who was important, Shaul was very, very important. He was I don't know if he was a tzaddik too. At the end of his life, he made a big mistake, but he was a good person. He was a person who had his head on his shoulder. And still, even people who seems good, you should not fear. You should not fear, because God will protect you. And because he did not fear, God protected him, and he was not able to kill him because he trusted that God is protecting him.
Il allait vraiment le tuer?
Yes, he sent his army. He really...
Wow.
That's really losing the spirit.
What?
Même, he's losing his mind.
Yeah, he was so jealous that he couldn't, yeah.
He wanted to be forever the king.
I guess.
Take a ship, no?
Or maybe he also wanted it to go to, he wanted it to, or he wanted it to go to his kids. I'm not sure what it was, but he wanted it to stay. You know?
Ils étaient pas de la même famille?
No.
They were not?
No.
Okay. Interesting. Comme quand même quelqu'un de très haut, spirituellement, il peut turn bad.
For sure, for sure.
That's what we learned about Sadikim.
Mais c'est rare que j'ai entendu que des tzadikim, ils ont eu des mauvais...
Also something interesting, a person who feels that you trust in God, they won't be able to harm you. And it's funny, I just saw yesterday someone shared in one of the groups, in my family group, about how to help a child who's being bullied. And I really thought about this. It was very... So he said, so she it was a psychologist, so she gave, one thing is different ways that people try to solve the issues, but it makes it worse. So one, the kid goes home and tells his mother, and his mother's like, don't listen to them. Is that gonna help? No, it's
Wow.
not gonna help. Or I'm gonna go and I'm gonna fight him, and they go and they see the kid, and
Yeah.
but when the kid is alone again, the kid it only makes
Ça
his
revient.
situation worse.
Ça revient.
So he goes and he tells the school. This is a real story. He goes and he tells
Ah
the
ouais?
school, the person who's taking care of the children, and she calls them and she says, "Is it true?" And the boy, says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that it made you feel bad." And after that, the situation gets worse because he said, if you ever call the school, so it gets a situation. So what did she do, this woman? She said, next time they come to you
Ouais.
and they tell you, because he would always be alone and he had no friends. And they tell you have no friends, you're alone, t'es seul, you're like you're socially awkward,
Loser,
whatever.
no.
Tell him,
Ouais.
answer, you know what? Yeah, it's true, I have no friends, but you probably don't either. And if you want, I can give you some tips, or something like a response that shows that you're not afraid.
Ouais.
And he did it. The kid did it, and it actually worked
Mm.
because all his other people, his friends who surrounded him, started laughing because it was funny. And since then, he stopped bothering him. So it actually worked, and it gave confidence to the kid.
So the point
Why-
is not to be afraid.
Why did I bring that? Because
Yeah.
not only will a person who trust in God not be afraid of man, right? Just like we see David HaMelech, who trusted God so much that he wasn't afraid of what men were out there to get him.
Okay.
But he was protected. Not only that, when people feel the fear you have from God, they won't want to bother you. They won't want to come to you and bother you because they will feel that fear, that trust. Sorry, not that fear, that trust that
In
you
God.
have in God, and that calmness. It brings you a certain calmness. So people with bitachon b'Hashem will
It
be
dégage
less,
quelque chose,
exactly, they give off this energy and will be less bothered by people around them than people who don't have that faith.
Cool.
And if the person still tries to harm you, right? And they
Yeah.
they manage to harm you,
Yeah.
just know that the outcome
It's
will be good. And where do we see a story that proves this? This is a story that you told me last week, Rabbi Akiva.
Yeah.
Rabbi Akiva was traveling, and he came to the city, and he needed to stay for the night.
Oh, d'accord,
And he knocks on the door, and every door, I think it was Jewish people, every door of the city, every house told him, no, we don't have place. They didn't want him. They didn't care. They didn't respect rabbis.
Wow.
They didn't want him. They were not people who hosted. Every single
Jewish
person.
people.
I think so. It was when he lived in Israel, I think. Every single person,
That's
no one
low.
wanted to host him. So much so, he had to sleep in the forest.
Ouais.
There's more details to the story, but I want to say just this point. He ended up sleeping that night in the forest. And what happened to the city?
Bird.
Burglars came, attacked, and killed out the whole entire city.
Ouais, tu l'as.
So here we see that even if they managed to harm him, right? They harmed him by not inviting him and by making him sleep in the forest, which looks so bad. He has to sleep in the forest outside in the dark with the dangerous animals. But in the end, the outcome was good. Yes, Donna, you want to share with us something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you've mentioned that story in the past, and something like he had some like he had like a fire on or something,
Yes,
and
so-
then it came out
and
and
it
it was
rained
cold,
and-
but it was actually good because they came to the forest and they couldn't find them, and then he had something else, and like it just kept on going.
Yes,
and
so
it
he
was-
had
it was
he
like-
had a rooster with him, a donkey, and the fire. So the rooster got killed by a wild animal. The donkey, I'm not sure what happened. And then he had a candle. He said, finally, I could only learn Torah. And the candle went out. And he says, but now I'm in the dark. But it saved him because when they came through the forest, the burglars, and because his candle was out, they didn't see him. So he was safe. So you see how every single detail.
Il est programmé.
But here I wanted to bring the point where the people harmed him by not, they said, no, we don't want you. They harmed him. They brought harm upon him. How do we see? If he has bitachon and Hashem, they still harmed him. They made him sleep in the forest. But we see how their harm was
so good.
actually, and the outcome was good. And you can see many times, sometimes you have trust in God, and the people are out there and they're not trusting and they're horrible and unfortunately there are people that they're in pain, so they cause
hurt.
pain to others.
Like
And but that if you trust in God, that bad will turn out to be a good thing for you. And yeah. And especially and that's why he brings David, who was harmed the most by someone, the king, the most important person in that generation, and he still was protected. Okay, so that's the second. We did 1, 2, and 3 reason why relying on alchemists, why an alchemist thought of being peaceful and having no anxiety and no stress in life is false, and how someone who puts their bitachon in Hashem is true, will really remove all anxiety, fear, and any negative from happening to them. Okay, the fourth is very interesting. והרביעי, כי בעל הכימיה אינו נמלט מהזמין, מהזהב והכסף הרבה לעד צחקו, או שלא יזמין מהם כלום, אלא כפי שיספיק לזמן מועט. The fourth manner in which a person who has bitachon is superior to the alchemist must either prepare an abundance of gold and silver for a time when he will need it, or prepare just the right amount for the interim. Either way, the alchemist is constantly in a state of anxiety. ואם יזמין ממנו הרבה, יהיה כל ימיו מפחד על נפשו שלא יאבד ממנו במיני סיבות האבדה, ולא ישקוט ליבו ולא תנוח נפשו מפחדו עליו מהמלך והעם. If he prepares a lot, he will constantly be afraid that he will somehow lose the silver or gold that he has already produced. He will not be able to feel calm or relaxed due to the fear of the king who might take it away from him, and due to the fear of the people who might steal it from him. So no matter what, someone who puts his trust in something other than God will always have fear. They're either going to have fear that people are taking away their money, they're going to have fear that they don't have enough, they're going to have fear that it's going to be taken away by the government or the king, they're going to be afraid that someone's going to steal it, It's not because you're wealthy that you have no fear. Actually, wealth brings more fear and more stress and more anxiety. So that's how he brings the fourth reason, how having bitachon removes those fears. In both of the above scenarios, the alchemist is worried that he might be left penniless. Either he's afraid that whatever silver or gold he has amassed will be seized or stolen from him, or he has afraid that he will be potentially left with nothing as a result of the inability to produce more. והבוטח באלוקים ביטחונו, חזק באלוקים שיטריב אותו כרצונו בעז שירצה ובמקום שירצה, כאשר יטריב העובר ברחם אמו והאפרוח בתוך הבצע, אשר אין בה מקום מופלש להיכנס אליו ממנו דבר מחוצה, והעוף באוויר והדגים במים והנמלה הקטנה עם חלישוסה. So over here he brings something beautiful. Conversely, a person who trusts in God strongly trusts that God will sustain him as he wishes. Remember the words he uses. God will sustain you as he wishes, not as you wish, as he wishes. At the time he wishes, when he thinks it's the right moment for you, and in the place that he wishes. Just as he sustains a fetus in its mother's womb, a chick inside the egg, and neither of them which have an opening through which food can enter. Similarly, God provides sustenance for the bird in the air, the fish in the water, and the ant despite its frailty. So now, to explain us how someone who is an alchemist or who relies on his strength and his ability to make money and to provide will always have that fear of having too much, of someone stealing, of having not enough, he will always have that fear. He brings the total opposite, someone who relies on God so much, and he brings very interesting examples. He brings first the example of a fetus in a womb. He brings the chick in an egg, and those two examples you see. He says that nothing can enter to feed them, right? The egg is closed, nothing can enter to feed it. Then he brings the birds in the air and the fish in the sea. And he brings the smallest, most frail insect, the ant, which is very interesting. Everything he brings has a reason. Before we move to that, I forgot to write something very important. That someone who believes...
The three realms of
what?
life. He's touching the three realms of life.
Which is?
The air, the water.
Exactly. The air, the water, and the earth. Yes. Very good. So just before, I forgot to mention, if someone believes that no one can harm you, he or she would never get angry. Okay, now I want you to think of that. If you truly believe that no one can harm you, right? Because you have bitachon b'Hashem, you will never get angry. It says that when someone gets angry, it's as if he served avodah zara. He served idol worshiper. Why? Because he doesn't believe that this came from God. He doesn't believe that God is in control. He believes that somebody else or something else is in control. So that's also something very important to know, that someone who has bitachon in Hashem, who believes in Hashem, will never get angry, because he will believe that everything comes from Hashem and no one has control over him. No one can harm him. No one can do damage to him. That everything that happens in life, there's really good, and we just have to find that good. We have to believe it first, and we have to find that good.
Being angry is like avodah
being
zarah.
angry is compared to avodah zarah. It's like as if he served idol worship. So now let's go to the fourth explanation. Why does he bring an egg and a fetus? And he says that nothing can enter inside. Doesn't he know? The Rabbeinu Bachai, and even if science wasn't as advanced back then, he still knew that they were being fed, that there's placenta, and that the egg has food inside. Why did he have to say that? Why did he have to bring the bird in the sky, the fish in the water, and the little ant? And like she said, air, water, and earth. All three, what are they called?
Everything is covered, elements. Everything is covered.
Exactly,
everything.
But it's more, it goes deeper, it goes very deep.
C'est quoi le premier? Le premier c'était l'aigle. C'est quoi?
Le fœtus. Le fœtus, l'œuf, l'oiseau, le...
Rabbeinu Bachaya is trying to give us...
Le poisson et
la fourmi.
Rabbeinu Bachaya is trying to give us tools in order to have bitachon. So someone can say, oh, what's the big deal? The fetus has a placenta, it's fed, the science, and explain the whole science. But if you understand that God created every being, every creature, with exactly what they need, that the moment the fetus has no more food, right? The placenta can't feed anymore, it comes out. The moment the chick ate up all its nutrient in the egg, it breaks free and it comes out. The bird in the sky, there's no food in the sky. He has to go and search for it in the ground. Chase for it. And did you ever see a bird that's hungry?
Bah, il va voler beaucoup, ouais.
Did you ever see a bird that's hungry?
Yeah.
No, starving. Not hungry. Sorry, not hungry. Starving. That's starved. That doesn't have food. Did you ever see a bird that's overfed? And I'm talking about wild birds,
true.
not.
No.
Did you ever see a fish that was missing anything underwater, in the water? An ant, the smallest ant that's so fragile that can be killed with one step. Was it ever missing food?
No.
Because God made sure to provide everything.
But to women, it's another story.
No.
Oh.
Everything. Just like God created the bird and the fish and the ant and the fetus with its placenta last week when I was in Florida, I met my friend and she showed me her birthing pictures, and it was I never saw my placenta. I don't know if you
Moi
did.
non plus, jamais de la vie.
And she
Elle a pris une
someone was she got a photographer to take pictures of her whole
Ouais.
birth,
Ouais.
and she saw the placenta, and she took a picture of the placenta. It was so beautiful. It looked like a
Sérieux?
tree. It looked like a tree. Like
Jamais
we
vu
don't
ça.
realize. You can either be like, oh, it's science, but when you think about it, that God created this little fetus and has this whole beautiful tree, like feeding it everything it needs. There's
No,
nothing
C'est
from
de
the
la magie. C'est
outside.
de la magie, là.
The
le
little
fait d'être
chick
enceinte.
that's growing, is it overfed? Is it underfed? So just like those creatures that are given exactly what they need, when they need, right? Hashem chose how to feed them.
When
He
wants.
chose when he, right?
And as he wishes.
As he wishes. For you, for us, human beings,
Okay.
we also have that. Everyone was created with their own fetus, or their own, their own
Neshama? Non. C'est quoi le mot?
Placenta.
placenta.
Okay.
Placenta. We all have exactly what we need. What's the difference? Why are there homeless
to
people?
work- we
Why
need
are
to-
there homeless people?
Because some people steal the placenta.
It's because of
or
greed.
volent.
It's
What?
because of the greed.
Parce que certaines personnes volent le placenta des autres.
Oh,
It's
shit.
because of the greed. Hashem,
Placenta,
whatever,
J'ai
c'est
compris,
juste
non,
un
j'ai
exemple.
compris l'image, mais comment
The
t'as
only
pensé à
reason
ça?
why
J'ai pas fait de lien. mais-
today there's
quand il y a des
there's
gens qui meurent de faim.
homeless
C'est évident,
people,
il y a parce qu'il y a des
or
gens
there's
qui ont
people
faim.
who don't have.
Ok.
It's either because we're not doing the keli for the bracha to come down, or because unfortunately greed is one of the biggest reasons why.
Ça,
the
c'est
world,
pas bon, ça.
There's,
Ok.
but if not, everything is perfect. There's one animal that starves, and he brings it over
Oh, yeah?
here. ויבצר הטרף מהארי אם תקפו בקצת הימים כמו שכסוף כפירים רשו ורעבו ודוח שהשם לא יחזרו כל טוב. In contrast this with the fact that sometimes even the lion, despite its strength, lacks sustenance, as it is written, young lions suffer want and are hungry, but those who seek the Lord do not lack any good. So why does he bring the lion? Out of all animals, you would think that the lion would never starve. He's the strongest animal. He lives on earth.
The king of the animals.
The king of the animals can attack any animals when he
Yeah.
wants. Yet, they bring a pasuk over here that says that young lions suffer and are hungry. Because everything in nature, everything that God created was
Yeah.
just to teach us a lesson to us human beings. And it's to teach us that it's not your strength, that it's not your greed. It's not because you took more, right? The people who took man, there was Dasan and Aviram, two Reshaim, that tried to take more man. And what happened to the man? It would go
would
bad.
rot, yeah.
It would rot. It would go bad. The lions, even with their strength, even with the king of the jungle, they will starve, but not the birds. Not the birds who rely completely on God. Not the fish who rely completely, who are so not vulnerable. Not the ant, not the fetus, not the chick. These are all very vulnerable animals who are 100% reliant on God's sustenance. And this represents human beings. The more you rely on God and you give your full bitachon, the more you will get everything you need. It might not be the way you want it. It might come a different way. It might come a different time, but it will come. It will come. Everything you need will come. You will have what you need.
Beautiful. C'est cute.
J'ai une question. Est-ce qu'on peut pousser un peu
La réflexion.
le fait de recevoir ce dont on a besoin dans l'éternité?
What does that mean?
Yeah, if you don't get it here, you'll get it in Rolam
Ouais.
Abba. Parce qu'il y a beaucoup. Moi, j'ai toujours demandé à mon père, par exemple, pourquoi les gens les plus religieux chez nous au Maroc, là, les rabbins, ça, c'était des gens très, 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 très pauvres parce qu'ils faisaient qu'étudier la Torah. Et j'étais comme, comment Hachem il les récompense? Qu'ils font Torah et mitzvot, et ils sont tellement pauvres. Il m'a toujours dit, c'est parce qu'ils travaillent dans ce monde, mais ils sont récompensés
First
dans
of
l'autre
all,
monde.
I'm sure they have everything they need.
Yeah, some
for
of
you.
them they will ask for money to eat and everything.
They have whatever they need. Well, just know that sometimes people are given money that doesn't belong to them. What's tzedakah? Is that
No,
God
but-
gives you money that doesn't belong, that
I
belongs
agree.
to another person.
I agree, but
So-
when you have to ask, faire l'aumône, c'est difficile.
I get it.
je trouve.
I understand, but
You know,
I don't
it's
know.
not the
I don't know
best,
those people.
reward, let's
I don't know
say.
those people, but I can say that some people don't care enough about material, and they don't mind maybe asking. And they're
No, it's true. They were not embarrassed about it. No.
They really believe in God. They
that.
believe that it comes from God, and it doesn't matter where it comes from and how it comes from. It will come to them, and we know a lot of people like that. I don't know if that's what you meant, but that's not what he's talking about. Over here, he's talking about sustenance, everything you need to live a healthy life. So again, let's review the four
manner.
Yeah, the four ways. So there's number one. What's number one? The alchemist, what does he need?
Tools.
He needs his tools and resources. Someone who has bitachon doesn't need any of that. He knows that whatever God puts in him, he can create a business out of anything, or he can work. He just needs to do his hishtadlut, like we said, but it doesn't matter how. It doesn't matter how. Hashem is creative, and he can find him ways of giving him the money the way he wants. The alchemist gets sick from the fumes. Bad things happen to people. Bad things can happen to the alchemist. The alchemist is afraid of his future, is nervous. Will he get sick? Will he survive? What's going to happen in the future? What happens to someone who has bitachon? He's not afraid of his future. He knows that just like God provided him in the present, he will take care of him in the past. And he's not afraid of things that negative things that happen to him, because he believes that even negative things are all for the good. And he is always joyful because of that, because he knows that everything that comes from Hashem is for the good. There's a story of a chassid who came to the Rebbe, and he said, I can't seem to be joyful. I can't find happiness. I have stress. I have this. I'm not happy. I don't know what to do. Help me. I wanna be happy. I just don't know how to be happy. The Rebbe told him, go to this town and go to this Jew. His name is Zushe. Go to him and spend the Shabbos there. He's going to teach you how to be happy. And so, you know the story?
Non, mais déjà, je trouve ça beau que quelqu'un t'apprenne à être happy.
So he goes, he travels to the city, and he asks around for the Zushe, and everyone knew him. He's like, he lives on the far outskirts in a poor, it makes me think of what you said, in a very poor area. And so he goes, the house is a little broken down. He knocks on the door, and he says, can I stay by you for Shabbos? And he says, for sure. And he watches the whole Shabbos. He sees a lot of his kids had skin issues. They had he spends a Shabbos where he sees a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. But he also sees that Zusha was always with a big smile. At the end of Shabbos, he says, I want to tell you the truth. I went to my Rebbe, I don't know if it was the Baal Shem Tov or maybe the Alter Rebbe, and I told him, that I'm having a hard time being happy with all my pain and suffering. And I see you have so much pain and suffering, and you're still happy. How are you doing it? He said, I don't have pain and suffering. He didn't see it like that.
No.
He didn't see it. Everything he had in life, he saw it as a blessing. He did not. He said, I don't know what you're talking. I can't. He said, no. He said, I can't help you. I don't have that. I can't relate. And he left, and he understood a big lesson from that. It's how do you see? You saw it as a negative thing when you see those people poor.
Yeah, of course.
But they don't. They're living the life. They have everything they need.
For sure.
So it's really all in the head. It's not about. You shouldn't look anymore about what people have. See how people live. Are they happy in their life?
I agree. But poorness, ça se dit, is never something like that you find a way to
but
be
I
happy
believe
about
that
it,
people,
you know what I mean?
some people,
c'est
tous dans la tête. C'est tous dans la tête. People are happy with the minimum.
No,
Poorness is all in the head.
It's about being anxious not to have, but maybe they're not anxious because they rely
They're
on
not,
God,
because they have everything they need. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
True,
he was poor. He lived in a broken down, but he didn't feel like he was missing anything. He had everything he needed. So it's all in the head, and that's where bitachon comes in. The third thing, which is I think very powerful, is the alchemist is secretive and always worried about people. It's a lack of trust in people. It's being secretive. It's being in a way, it's giving strength to people in the wrong way, in a negative way. And by putting your bitachon in Hashem, instead of having that like burden and separation between other people, you have that openness and that freedom and that inclusion. And you don't give strength to any human being, because no one's going to control you, no one's going to hurt you, no one's going to be able to harm you, because God is protecting you. So you're taking away that strength. And even more so, any harm that a person does to you
It's also for the good.
is also for the good. First of all, they're not going to be able to harm you. They shouldn't be able to harm you. But it could happen.
Like
it could happen.
Miller,
And even if it does happen, God will protect you, and their bad is going to have a positive outcome. And the last thing that we just learned, the fourth, is that someone who's an alchemist, or someone who puts their reliance on something other than bitachon, than trust in God,
Anxiety.
will constantly have anxiety that they have too much, too little, someone will steal, and all that is gone. Is gone. How do you take away? How do you have that bitachon? Is just think of that little chick. Just think of you as that little chick who has everything, all the nutrients in that egg. And when your nutrients will be done, then you will crack that egg, and you will have a different way of, Hashem will provide in a different way. Or that fetus who has everything they need, has all the feeding, and when that feeding is done, you will go through a different stage in your life, and it will come through a different way. Or that bird, or that fish, or that little ant, Hashem will provide you. And it's not your strength, like the strength of a lion. It's not your strength that will get you anywhere. It's not your power, right? The lion is very powerful. It's not his power. He can still be hungry. It just comes from Hashem. And this is what we have to use, these examples, in order to give us the tools. I was reading a book last night that works hand in hand with this class. She was writing, I forgot her name. I think Hay. I forgot her. Louise Hay. Yeah.
Okay.
So she was writing how you should say like positive, like people who suffer from like money, it's all in the head. And if you say that life will provide, so she wrote life, but I switched it to God. She wrote, life will provide me with everything I need. Life will give me abundance. And you should repeat these affirmations every day in order, and it really makes a change. So this is the affirmations we should be using. God will give us everything we need. God will provide us, just like that little chick. These examples are here to help us, give us tools of how to strengthen our bitachon in Hashem. So this is a class. Thank you for listening.